Who's on the Big East Mount Rushmore of college coaches? You're on Big East Energy Weekly. Welcome into Big East Energy Weekly. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto. With me, as always, is my boy Casey Matthews. Casey, this is an exercise that we want to do, but first, I want to mention a couple of things. We're going to talk about Big East Mount Rushmore for coaches. Want to thank Asabasa Spice for being a sponsor of the program for the first few months of our network's existence. Because obviously Big East Energy is sponsored. It is sponsored by them, but also with the Big East Energy Network, we're expanding out to maybe have some folks join us that aren't going to be on the flagship shows. BigEastEnergyPods.com. Check that out. Yeah, man, I've missed you. You've been away, and the very first topic of discussion on the Big East Energy Weekly show is honestly, I'm going to thank CJ Moore from The Athletic, who I will have on my Hoopscat pod later this afternoon, because he started me thinking about if we did this exercise just in the Big East, who would be on not top 25 since 2000, but who's on the Big East Mount Rushmore. And before we get into that, one of the thing, and before we even get into our list, one of the names we'll talk about. There's one name that's been kind of a hot topic. Wouldn't think so. Hasn't coached since 2013. But Jim Calhoun, one of the best program developers in the history of college basketball, from Northeastern to UConn to St. Joseph's in the D3 level, coaches the best. And so for this exercise, and Casey's not a UConn hater in that respect, where he's just going to be like, well, fuck Calhoun or fuck Dan Hurley. So what we're going to do is, I don't want to have on either of our Mount Rushmores Jim Calhoun, Dan Hurley, or Coach Mack, because those are our inherent biases. Those are our guys. Okay. So for the sake of this argument today, we already know how good they are. Let's talk about the rest of the Big East. And that includes guys who aren't in the Big East anymore, like a Jim Boeheim. I know Rick Pitino is back. Jay Wright, who is retired, like all these names, and we'll get into it. So what are, like, when I say that to you, who's the first person outside of what I just mentioned that comes to mind when you think Big East and Mount Rushmore?
For me, it's Jay Wright.
Okay.
That's the name that comes to mind right away. But I think, like, this is an interesting topic, right? Because I think you Mount Rushmore, which Mark reminded me I should have known. I was just there last year. Has 4 people on it. I was thinking 5. Forgive me, I'm not a history major. But so it's hard to just say, here's the 4 people. And I also think you have to expand it beyond just who's had the most success, but who has had the biggest impact on the Big East and made it the brand that it is. So that's kind of where my mind goes when I think of this, because I think it's easy to go look at all the names, who's got the most wins, who's got the highest winning percentage.
Sure.
If you do it that way, though, you're going to have to put Jamie Dixon on your Mount Rushmore, because Jamie Dixon has one of the highest winning percentages of anybody that's coaching the Big East. But he's not on my Mount Rushmore, right? So, so yeah, Jay Wright comes to mind. Are we going? Do you want to just go through it, or do you want to just
no,
talk
just talk through it? So, like, for me, you mentioned Jay Wright. The first person, and I'm older than you, so this, it's a probably 10-year age gap. The first person that comes to mind is John Thompson. Big John, and you talked about identity. You talked about shaping what the Big East is. I mean, I don't think you could go any better than that. Like, we can argue that, we can split hairs on that. The dude just was imposing. Big John always had physical, tough teams, and I hate Georgetown. Like, as a UConn fan. Like, I can't stand Georgetown. But as a basketball fan, I love Georgetown because they're so iconic.
Yeah.
The gray and blue, the menacing. And listen, I'm rocking my Hinkle a Fieldhouse shirt for Butler and obviously home field. Thanks to home field for the hookup there, but also like to me, like ask my wife, I wear gray all the time. So it always pains me when I see like a really cool like Georgetown shirt and I'm like, I can't wear that. I can wear it on the show when we do like Big East stuff, but
Yeah.
I don't really ever wear like I have a Creighton shirt. Like I don't wear like teams that I don't love out. Like some
Yeah.
like, I wear it around the house, work out, whatever. So I love gray and blue. It's one of my favorite combos, like that gray and navy. So like to me, once they're iconic, those jerseys are
Yeah.
like I don't even like
They're
a,
ridiculous.
a Jordan brand, some like 11s on like a Jordan that is in the gray and in navy. Dude, sign me up. Like I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. Speaking of, this is a great time to plug our new Georgetown show. Going to be launching hopefully next week. Bleeding Blue and Gray.
There you go.
Rasheen is going to be launching hopefully next week. So stay tuned for that, Georgetown fans.
Let's go.
It's gonna be a great show. We're excited to have them join the network. But yeah, I agree with you. John is a legend. He is on my list.
Do you know who else is iconic that? And I want to get your reaction to this. And it's because of, I know he had more than this. He coached at Cleveland State, but Rollie Massimino, like that, that face, like him, like losing his mind. I've seen Rollie and coach in person. Is he still alive? Like that's another great question. Like I feel like
I don't know.
I don't want to kill him off and say he was, but to me, if he's still alive, and I think he is, Rollie Massimino is the epitome of like that East Coast Italian, just the culture of that time. 1985 national champion, beat Georgetown, ironically. Very early architect of Nova's success. Go watch Holy Nova, by the way, with our boy Matt Janis.
We do have to throw in there, Mark. He did unfortunately pass, so rest in peace to Coach. But he absolutely huge impact on the Big East. He was just outside of my top 5, but no, I had to adjust it to 4. But he was just outside my list. But yeah,
geez, Coach has been passed since 2017. Where the hell have I been? Head down.
He's a legend. He's a legend.
He is a legend. Okay, so
let me give you another name.
Give me to me, yeah.
Sweet Lou. Now here's the deal. You know how much I love Coach Pitino. Like he's it's interesting. This is where this discussion gets fun, because to me, if I'm ranking just basketball coaches, I have Coach Pitino above Coach Carneseca.
I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Maybe not. Maybe some old school St. John's fans.
Yeah.
Sure.
But in terms of Big East Mount Rushmore, like who are the people that really shaped the league and pushed the league forward? I think Coach Carneseca has to be considered there, and I think I'd put him on my Mount Rushmore. What do you think about that? Is that I do.
Yeah, I don't hate on that. I would not be mad at that, because like you have to think about what St. John's at that time. We had Carl Banks on my show talking about his revival of starter and like all of the different gear that they're putting out this year for the Big East schools. And he was drafted by the Giants during that Carneseca era where St. John's was really good in the early 80s. And so he was a Big East pioneer, beloved figure in the city. And he really did keep New York City college hoops relevant through the 80s and probably in early 90s to a certain extent. So I totally have no issue with that because of the icon that he is, the sweater, that, because I'm going to get to another guy that has like a droopy kind of whiny face in Jim Boeheim. Like it's like all of these guys were characters within themselves. Right. even if they weren't in the Big East, if they were in the ACC or they were in hell, even if they were in the West Coast Conference, like, do you think about the names that and the personalities of these coaches? Coaches make college basketball. I know that we're in this player empowerment era. Don't get me wrong. I love it that the kids can make money now, but coaches in general in college basketball, that's the difference between NBA and college. Do you think anybody, I mean, outside of like hoops heads, are like, wow, Mark Dagnall, Oklahoma City, what a great coach. He is a great coach, but he's an NBA coach. So even though that's where maybe the pinnacle is, as far as college coaching goes, if Mark Dagnall was a coach in college, he'd be a star because he just won a championship. Right? Todd Golden just won a championship, and now he's probably considered the next up-and-coming great coach. But when it comes to personality, Big East had it. Now, Jim Boeheim, he's on my Mount Rushmore. I know UConn fans are going to kill me for this because I hate Syracuse. Like, I hate Syracuse with a passion, and now because they left for the ACC, even more so. But Jim Boeheim and his stupid, oh, woe is me face, he's on there. 1,000 wins, won a national championship with Carmelo, pioneered the lazy 2-3 zone. Kidding. Face of the league for a lot of it. You could put multiple faces in the league, but he was a part of that.
I don't disagree. I have him on my list too. And honestly, I thought about putting Coach Pitino on there along with Sweet Lou, just because of Pitino's done it at Providence. He did it at Louisville when they were in the Big East. So, but I did end up going with Coach Boeheim.
Okay, so you got Boeheim. You have Lou Carneseca. Who are your other two?
Jay Wright
and John Thompson. Okay. Yep. So I have we're gonna split hairs on one, and I love Jay Wright. I have a lot of respect for him. I've never really hated Villanova. Definitely a rivalry. There's something about, I don't know. Like there's just like certain teams that you just can't stand, and there's teams that you're like, all right, whatever. It is what it is, right? If we lose to them, it sucks, but it's not the end of the world. My guys I got Boeheim. I have John Thompson. I have your boy, Lou Carneseca. Okay. And because I can't put Dan, because I can't put Jim Calhoun on there, I'm going to put Rollie. I put him on there because of the impact. Like, his impact at Villanova was not greater than Jay's. He won more national championships, won more Final Fours, elevated Villanova into that kind of blue blood conversation, in my opinion. At least at that time. I don't dismiss Rollie because he's the quintessential person that defines what an underdog is, and they won a title as an 8 seed. Mm-hmm. And I know UConn fans will be like, well, UConn won as a 7 seed, and I'm with you. Like, I love that, and that's part of Jim Calhoun's story. We literally could do a whole pod about Jim Calhoun and Dan Hurley and their legacy. Sure. But if we exclude them from the list, I'm going Rollie, just because like he's the NCAA tournament. He's March Madness.
Yeah, here's my argument against it. And again, we are splitting hairs. Think about when Jay Wright won those national championships, and think about the state of the Big East. You didn't have UConn. Georgetown was down. You didn't, Syracuse was out. Louisville was out. The league was kind of it was a weird time for the league. And to me, Jay Wright and his players and team carried the league and really, I think, bridged that gap to kind of allow the league to get on that solid footing again and be recognized as a power league again. I also know during that same era, that was because and again, I could be getting my dates wrong. Obviously, I'm not a history guy here, but when did UConn win with Kevin Ollie?
They won in 2014.
Yeah. So, and that was, again, people are going to kill me for this. That was before they had left for the the American, right?
No,
East, whatever.
they were in the American there. And
But
so
with players from the previous era, right? Like with Big East players for the most part.
Yeah. If I go look, we'll look at the exact. I'm pretty sure. What I feel like it was because the Kemba led team that won in 11 was obviously Big East. They were eighth in the Big East and went on that run that year. But the Big East was freaking dominant that year. Holy Christ! Yeah. Think about that. The national champion team was the eighth or ninth best team in the Big East that year. Just goes to show you where that team was.
But you know what I'm saying? It was just an odd time for the Big East, and I just felt like I really do look at what Jay Wright did during that time, winning those national championships. Is like, if we're going to talk impact, that's why for me, would give him the edge, because I think before then Villanova was, a national brand. I'm not saying that they weren't, but once he came in and won those national championships, Villanova was the premier Big East team. Look, when I was working in the league, it was Villanova and then it was everybody else. And that's because of him. And if he's still coaching, Mark, I know you're going to kill me. UConn fans are going to kill me. I still think it'd be that way. I think he's that good. So I don't know. Well, it's an interesting.
It's what's my grandfather used to say? Ifs and buts and candies and nuts. What a wonderful Christmas it would be.
I have one.
You know what I mean?
I have one about aunts and uncles too that I won't say on the show. But
I think for me, whether that's true or not is kind of irrelevant. I think Jay Wright is a great coach. I think where he had Villanova was incredible. But I think and I would put Jay Wright on my Mount Rushmore if I didn't have such a soft spot in my heart for the now past Rollie Massimino. But my reasoning behind that is, again, just this idea that I hope that they don't expand the tournament, because I want there to be the UConn teams from 2014 that make runs, or the Kentucky team. See, Kentucky fans, I'm giving you some love. The Kentucky teams that make the Final Four when they're not supposed to, like, you know what I mean, like the eight or nine seed that underachieved and went. I don't want it to be watered down where it's like, all right, well, now there's 76 teams or whatever it is. That 85 national title team is the quintessential underdog championship team. And to me, it elevated the conversation around, well, anybody can win. You know what I mean? Like, if you think about it, like there just wasn't, there had never been a one seed that had been beaten at that point. Two seeds rarely lost. So that started the parity that we start to see now. And I know last year, notwithstanding, all 4 1 seeds, first time since I think 2009 that's happened. But we've seen that kind of parity, and that's part of the reason why I think Rollie is on my list.
Yeah, Mount Rushmore, it's the top. It's 4 people, right? So, like, if you get offended that you're not on the 4, sorry, But it's splitting hairs. So many great names. That's why the Big East is what it is. There, you could go down the list of Big East coaches and be like, oh, you left this guy off. We left everybody off except for 4 people. So
it's true.
A lot of great coaches.
But before we move on to the next one, next topic, which is the ESPN Plus deal with the Big East. I mean, if you're listening to this and you disagree with us, remember, we are not adding like 2 of the, and really 3 of the best coaches to ever coach in the Big East on this list. I mean, personally, if you had to do it, would you put Mac up there, even if you could, or no? I didn't think so, right?
No,
I'm just curious.
No. Yeah. I mean, listen, he's on my, personal Mount Rushmore.
Yeah,
he's the
absolutely.
best. But if you look at the history of the league, I think if you asked him and you say you could put yourself on this list, he'd say there's no chance I'm putting myself on this list. There's too many great names, and he has too much respect for the coaches that have kind of paved the way in the league. So no. And see, this is what's interesting, Mark. If we take our rule out for a second, like, you look at some of these names, I don't know, man. I don't know that you can put. It's weird because like Coach Calhoun, I love him. I think he's one of the best to ever do it. He would definitely be on my
Correct.
Mount Rushmore. When you look at these other names, though, like I don't think there's room for Coach Hurley right now. Now, that's not to say that he doesn't chisel off somebody else's face and in his career, but right now, I don't know. It's four people. Like it's hard to. There's gonna be Hall of Famers left off this list. So you know,
It's not easy, but I would easily put. I did when you were on. I forget where you went, but here nor there. You don't have to divulge your whereabouts. Let's put it that way. But my point is like I did one show on my show, and it was in response to some. And I know it's not. And before people get on me again about this, like I know what Ken Palm is.
yeah,
I know that it's predictive metrics. I know it's not tallied for, it's not quote unquote biased. But Ken Palm put out the top, I think, was it 50 schools of all time in basketball, and UConn was like 11th or 10th. And like teams like Texas were ahead of them in college basketball. And I was just like,
yeah,
what are we doing? Like to me, like
yeah.
what to me, like what, and I hate to shit on Texas. I'm not trying to do that, but like to me, what bothers me about lists like this is they don't take into account the difficulty level of winning not only back-to-back national championships, but doing it in an era where everyone goes and leaves.
Mm-hmm.
The turnover is insane. It's never been done before like this,
Yeah,
even by Coach K. Coach K had a freaking dominant team for 4 years and won twice with that team. Went to what, four Final Fours with Christian Laettner? I mean, like, come on, man. Like, it's just a different world. You can't wait 1991, 92, and 23, 24 together. This is higher because the difficulty level, the coaching's the same, apples to apples, probably, but the difficulty level is just not the same.
yeah.
And it's the
No, I
same thing
agree.
when you talk about like Kansas and Kentucky and North Carolina that won a lot of titles back when it wasn't even the field of 64. Before we even
Yeah,
got to 68, 32, 16, 8. You try to tell me that a Kentucky title in the 50s is the same as Villanova's titles in the
right.
2010s? There's no fucking way. There's
No, you
no
definitely.
way.
There's context is everything, but it's
So,
hard. It's hard when you make these lists. I just think again, going back to my previous argument, is impact on the league and the history of the league. I think Calhoun has made a bigger impact on the Big East than
oh, I,
Coach
I don't
Hurley.
disagree. I don't disagree with that at
Yeah,
all. If I had to pick between the two, I'm putting Coach Calhoun over Coach Hurley on Mount Rushmore just because he means more to UConn in the sense of it all versus say Dan, who's still there. And
yeah,
you know uh it just is what it is, man. Like
yeah.
I literally could talk about this all day, but the reason why I did this, the reason why I did that kind of weighted list and like put point values based off of difficulty level of winning a national championship or getting to a Final Four or getting to a Sweet 16 by year and by era is because no one else has. And it's so wild to me that, and I know if you grew up in Kansas and you're a huge Kansas fan, like if you go to Allen Fieldhouse, they literally say 6-time national champion. Really? You didn't win six. You won four, and two of them are from the 20s. That doesn't count. Like, what the hell are we doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, so there, and I get that. If you're a Jayhawks fan, you're like, fuck this guy. But at the same time, dude, if UConn was like talking about Yankee conference titles, you'd be like, what are you do? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so that's my issue.
Side note: have you ever been to Allen Fieldhouse?
Have not.
You got to
I
go.
heard it's. I know. And I'm sure I'm gonna be welcome now.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you got to go for
They're,
maybe
they're gonna
maybe maybe this
roll
year.
out the red carpet, right?
Maybe this year when UConn's in town.
Maybe. We'll see. All right, let's transition and talk quickly, and we'll shut down this show with ESPN Plus. Is it a big deal? We're going to talk about that shortly after the break. All right, you're back on Big East Energy Weekly with Casey Matthews and Mark Zanetto. Check out all of our pods. If you want to see who we have on our roster, go to bigenergymediapods.com, bigenergymediapods.com. If you're confused about that, that's kind of our parent company, if you will, right? It lists all of our shows, our show, Roll Jays, Hoops Cap, and many others. And we're adding shows, adding audio, just audio shows, video shows, the whole deal. So, all right, ESPN Plus, big deal or what do you think?
So, gone back and forth. We actually talked about this on the Roll Jays. For men's basketball, I don't think it's a big deal. It doesn't move the. I think what's it? 25 men's basketball games are going to be on ESPN Plus, and it's going to be the games essentially that Fox doesn't want. So,
right.
Like for instance, Creighton just put out their non-conference schedule. It includes Maryland Eastern Shore. It includes South Dakota, Utah Tech, some teams that you're just probably not going to put on Fox. Maybe those end up on Fox, but for the most part, I think it's safe to say probably going to end up on ESPN Plus. That's fine. At least it's available to watch, but I don't think it moves the needle for men's basketball. I think it's a really big deal for women's basketball, and I think it's a big deal for volleyball. And then the rest of the Olympic sports, I think it's great. I do. But does it move the needle? Is it that big? I just don't see it as a huge deal outside of the impact on women's basketball and volleyball. Obviously, we aren't a volleyball show at all, but Creighton volleyball is a powerhouse. Marquette has a very good volleyball team. There's some others that are okay. I'm hoping that this will elevate volleyball in the Big East. But where I really do see an impact is women's basketball in the Big East. Again,
sure.
UConn obviously is already a national brand. You could put UConn on any network and people are going to watch it and find a way to watch it. I think this is great for the Jays women's basketball program. I do.
Yep.
More people have ESPN and ESPN Plus than are going to have access to Flow. It's ESPN Plus is, I think, cheaper than Flow Sports. The production quality is better. So I think it's great for that. And you know what? I think in this right now in this time where women's basketball is really having a moment, and I hope that moment continues to grow. I think it's perfect timing, and I really hope that when you look at Big East women's basketball, it's obviously UConn, then it's Creighton, and then it's everybody else. And I really hope that this will help elevate Big East women's basketball and maybe improve some of those programs just because of some more notoriety by being on an ESPN network. So I don't know. What do you think? I mean,
this is a great time to also promote. We have the Big East. It's not called Big East Energy Weekly. It's called Built to Ball. It's a show with a host, T. Baker, who works and is a Big East women's journalist for women's basketball for the Next, and he writes for them there. And so he is on our network and does a flagship show, Built to Ball. And he actually did a show based off this that has done very well and really. And his message to me a couple weeks ago, last week on Wednesday said, hey, this is the quote from him. He said, I plan to record sometime today on ESPN's deals impact on women's basketball specifically. And I'm getting Val on the phone today, Val Ackerman, the commissioner. So can add some color to the episode. He said, any questions you want to ask her? And I literally just said this. So this is this is how I feel about the ESPN Plus deal. I wrote no in all caps. And I said, maybe just say on behalf of all fans everywhere, we don't have to pay for Flow Sports anymore. That's how I feel. Yeah. And sometimes, and I know people listening to this would also agree that ESPN Plus can be really shitty, especially if you're a mid-major fan. And mostly it's because you get a lot of kids like breaking into the industry and are like doing color commentary or play-by-play, or they get someone
Right.
local that maybe doesn't pronounce the names the way you know they should be pronounced. I do that all the time. People give me crap about that all the time. So I empathize with those folks, but at least it's got a little bit of a better production value. You know, for the most part, you're going to get what you want from an ESPN Plus broadcast, in particular with, you know, your higher level, like, you know, Seton Hall basketball is not going to have a camera that's moving back and
Mhm.
forth like sometimes you see on some of the lower end. I remember watching my boy Wes Miller's Cincinnati team play a really tough Howard team at Howard a couple years back on ESPN Plus, and it was literally like watching a tennis match but on television because the camera kept going like this and like this. And I thought I was gonna get seasick.
Yeah.
Like, it can be really bad with ESPN Plus, but it's better than Flow Sports, because who the hell is Flow Sports and why did they have why did they have this deal? Like, why did they have this deal? I think it
I
does a
don't
good
know.
job for the Big East as a whole, from the Olympic sports, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
You know, men's baseball, women's softball, like we've won, you know, Big East championships with those schools. You know, I don't know if they're going to throw tennis on there or golf or any of these other sports, but it's going to be if you're a fan of the school, like if you live in Omaha and you're a Creighton fan, you 1000% will get more out of ESPN Plus than you would Flow Sports. So it's
Yeah.
for the everyday fan, especially the older fan, who is a lot of our demographic that's over 50 and watches a ton of sports. It's a good deal. I think it's $10 a month and you get everything.
Let me ask you this, and kind of pivot a little bit away from that side of it back to men's basketball and the impact. I feel like ESPN, because men's hoops has the deal with Fox,
Mhm.
the ESPN bias against the Big East is a real thing.
Oh yeah.
I've always felt that way. Even when I was on the staff, it felt like you're not going to see many Big East highlights when they come out with their rankings. You always sort of get knocked a couple pegs just because you're not an ESPN conference. I wonder now if this deal, if there will be any kind of impact on some of those things, which, you know me, I don't get super into like rankings like that people put. It's whatever for me. But I do think there is a level of, like, if you're going to look up sports, you're probably going to ESPN first. And so if you're reading and putting together rankings, you're probably going to look at ESPN. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any uptick in how we're rated on by ESPN writers.
The last thing I'll say, and we'll close the show, is it's a good point, and I agree, but I don't think there's going to be much impact to that because
Yeah.
because it's still streaming, and whether we like to agree with it or not, because we're literally doing a streaming show, the respect you get from being on a network that is on cable TV versus just doing either YouTube or just streaming is just like an apples to oranges comparison.
Yeah.
You know, Jay Billis is going to do the studio show on ESPN. He's likely not going to do an ESPN Plus broadcast because
Right.
they can't afford to do that, right? So it's just there's a lot of that. You do get some really great broadcasters that are on ESPN Plus. Someone local that comes to mind is Spencer Turkin. He does A&T's basketball here in Greensboro. Phenomenal voice. If he wanted to continue to do that at a national level, I know he could. So, like, you know, I just think that you get those diamonds in the rough broadcasters and announcers that you kind of fall in love with. But outside of that, you're run of the mill. Like, Mike Greenberg's not going to talk about Big East basketball on Get Up or First Take. It just doesn't happen. So it takes literally, I mean, just think about it. And then because I know I'm going to get the UConn Homer stuff here too. A Big East school just won back-to-back national championships 1 year removed. And it wasn't like a national story on ESPN every day. If it was Duke or it was Kansas or
100%.
Kentucky, dude, you'd be sick of it. You'd get Duke fatigue from how much they talked about. Oh, can John Shire do it again? You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah, I agree.
as much as people complain about UConn fans, and when I go talk to CJ Moore here in a few minutes about how his experience with UConn fans over a 24-hour period, there's a reason why. There's a reason why they're so angry and frustrated is because they live in Connecticut, it's in Bristol. The freaking place is in there, in the same state, and they still don't get the proper coverage.
Well, send CJ my best wishes because I'm sure he is getting pounded right now.
I'm sure he's super excited about jumping on the Hoopscat pod.
What's bad publicity is still good publicity, right?
That's right, man. A hate watch is the same as a love watch. So that being said, this has been another episode of Big East Energy. Go check out Casey on Roll Jays, my show, the Hoopscat pod about UConn. Roll Jays, obviously, Creighton show. Casey's a phenomenal host. It was probably a little bit better coach. I'm kidding. And he's like, not sure. Love that. I love what we're building. It's good to have you back. It's growing every day. Georgetown show's coming. Bleeding blue and gray. We have Built a Ball. We have all this great stuff on Big East Energy Network. Go check out all the podcasts. Download them all so you don't miss a moment of Big East action. If you're interested in how you can host a show on our channel, give us a DM, shoot me an email, mark@bigeastenergy.com, and we will figure that out. Casey, you good?
I'm great. I'm really excited about the Georgetown show. I've been wanting a Georgetown show for a while. Finally got it. I'm pumped. So stay tuned for that next week.
Let's go. This has been another episode of Big East Energy Weekly. We'll see you next week.